Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Crypto Hipster Podcast. This is your host, Jamil Hassan, the Crypto Hipster, where I bring you founders, entrepreneurs, executives, thought leaders, amazing people all around the world. And today, I have an amazing person on the other side of the world. He is coming to me from Dubai on video. The city looks beautiful, and I'm looking forward to this interview today. I have the co-founder of Ferrum Network, Taha Abbasi. Taha, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jamil, for having me here. It's exciting. Yeah, I am in Dubai, but that's the beauty of crypto, right? Like we're all connected from no matter where we are in the world. I was really looking forward to this discussion and excited to chat with you, man.
Awesome, awesome. I'm excited too. So let's kick things off and ask you first. I ask everybody a similar question, but they get amazing answers. What is your background, and is it a logical background for what you're doing now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that this is how you start off the interview with other folks as well, because it probably gives a lot of insight. My background, I've had the blessing and privilege of doing some really, really cool things before I got involved in crypto. And some of it is just hard work and grit, but a lot of it is just luck. You're in the right place at the right time. I think isn't that what crypto is about sometimes too? You hear about Bitcoin at the right time back in the day, and even now, with certain calls. So for me, I have a software engineering background. I went to school for that, and I started off. I like to say I started programming when we still had physical keyboards on our phones. Now everything's touchscreen. So I actually started off with web development after I completed my schooling. And then I got into when iPhones came out and then the App Store was released, I got into iOS development and Android. And then I got into software architecture. And through some of the work that I was doing, I had some of my colleagues and connections out here in Asia. I had the opportunity to work as a project CTO for National Geographic's channel, where I got to build the world's first zero carbon footprint race platform for them. That was the ticketing system to participate in the Earth Day run they do every year in honor of like the environment and to protect the earth. They do this run, and they wanted to give people tickets by actually doing carbon offset actions. So that was really cool. And then I also had the opportunity to contribute to Swift, which is the open source programming language created by Apple to build all of our iPhone apps. And then perhaps one of the coolest thing is myself and the teams that I led got to work on the Mars 2020 in Europa missions, where we actually got to work on some automation testing and work on the Mars rover that was then sent out to Mars just actually about a year or two ago. The latest iteration of it was sent out. So this is before crypto, but I was always involved from a technical standpoint in the blockchain industry and did some work there in Singapore area as well, which got recognized. I got a chance to give a TEDx talk about how blockchain can be used to save lives and to break barriers instead of just for, at that time, it was for like, all it's about is drugs and hiring hitmen is all people thought of Bitcoin as, right? So I've had this interesting, journey, and then I found Ferrum. I actually invested in Ferrum at first. I was an initial community member, got on the governance committee, and then I really loved what Ferrum is all about. So I came on board full time in 2020, 2021, and it's been an awesome journey since then.
Awesome, awesome. So zero carbon, and we're going to talk about what Ferrum Network is all about and what you do regarding ordinals on the Bitcoin blockchain network, right?
Yeah, we're gonna get into that. If you want, we can start there now. I guess that's
Sure.
Ordinals are huge. So, would you like to get into that?
Yeah, what's Ferrum all about, and then let's get into the ordinals.
So, it's really easy to explain what Ferrum's all about because it's described in the name. So, if you're a geek about anything scientific, which I am, so Ferrum is actually the Latin word for iron. Iron is the 26th element on the periodic table. And the reason we chose this name, because iron has a unique ability. One of its key attributes is that it can fuse with the most amount of elements with the least amount of friction. And that's why we chose this name. The ethos of Ferrum is collaboration over competition. It's an interoperability protocol. It looks to build tech and infrastructure that removes barriers to the mass adoption of Web3 at large. And this spans across payment settlement, information movement, music, art, and many other areas because we're the infrastructure providers. We're not going out building all these solutions. We're providing the infrastructure so others can build on top of it, right? So Ferrum is about connecting all the different layer ones, all the different DApps, all the different DeFi protocols, musicians, artists who want to get their voice out into the world in a decentralized way. And we are the ones providing the infrastructure, sort of like the business behind the business, to make that happen. That's what our ethos is about. And we say that our success is dependent on the success of all of the layer ones, the projects, crypto at large, the success of those individual initiatives, right? So that's why we work very collaboratively, even with people that you might think we should be competing with. We collaborate with them to enhance things for the betterment of humanity. And that's something that's been really exciting, which is why Ordinals, I guess we can get into that now, as Ordinals started to bring attention back to Bitcoin. You know, Bitcoin is what started it all off. Even this podcast, Ferrum itself, none of it would have much meaning without the white paper that was released by Satoshi on October 31st, 2008. You know, like that's what kicked it all off. So while Bitcoin was started off as like this simple use case of transparent peer-to-peer payment settlement with removing centralized trust parties, it kind of stayed that way for a while, and other ecosystems took off, as we all know. But Ordinals are bringing sort of that attention back to Bitcoin because they're giving a way to tell Bitcoin story. They're giving a way to have on-chain permanence with art, on-chain provenance with information storage, and also giving a way to scale Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a scaling limitation, which I know we're going to get into as well. And what's happening now through Ordinals, through runes, through L2s, and other things that even Ferrum is contributing to R&D and development of, is going to allow to scale Bitcoin and scale crypto at large, in my opinion.
I wasn't planning on getting into the scaling issue, but I'm going to. My next question is going to be, how will Ordinals pave the way for the creation of unique tokenized versions of individual Bitcoins with specific attributes and then impact Bitcoin's fungibility and scalability?
That's a great question. So I think Ordinals, in a sense, for folks that are, you know, you have like this adoption chart. You have like these early adopters that get into things just because they are like super interested in it. And then the mass adoption and the S curve like comes a little bit later. So for those early adopters, they already understand with the rare sats, with the sat attributes, you already have ordinal theory assigning a serial number to every single sat that has been created. This is what ordinal theory was all about when Casey Rodarmore launched it. He essentially was able to give a way to uniquely identify every single Satoshi that has been mined and created, right? So now you can track the Bitcoin or the Satoshis that were initially created by Satoshi Nakamoto himself, then the ones that were first mined by Hal Finley, which was the first ever block mined by someone other than Satoshi Nakamoto. You can identify the pizza sats, which were used on May 22nd, 2010. 10,000 Bitcoin was used to purchase 2 large pizzas, and those stats have they tell a story of Bitcoin. You know, human beings are all about story. This is why we refer to each other. I call you Jamil, you call me Taha. You don't call me one, I don't call you two. Numbers, while they have some value, the story, the names, our last name tell us something about our lineage, something about our family. We are story telling beings. We've always told story even before we had a written language. So ordinals, in my opinion, are the way to tell Bitcoin's story. And that storytelling mechanism is the way to share with the world why crypto and Bitcoin and decentralized currencies are the way of the future, why they can actually question the narrative of inflation. We accept inflation to be the norm. We accept that cost of cars, cost of rent, cost of mortgage, cost of food, eggs, milk is just going to go up the same way we accept that you need to breathe air to live. But that should not be the case. And in order to articulate that, we can't articulate it by sharing the white paper because it's very technical. It's, in a sense, to the average user, it's very boring. But if we can share a story, share the story of music, of art, and then use that to educate people about how the price of houses in the US, for example, in Bitcoin has fallen since 2018. Like you need a lot less Bitcoin to buy a house, but you need a lot more dollars to buy a house. So now you can have a story-based conversation. So that's why I'm very bullish on Ordinals. I think Ordinals are giving that way to share that story. And if you want to dive anything into more specific, I can get as technical as we want or as specific as we want as well.
I do the first thought question is basically, you can do an ordinal or NFT on every single Satoshi that's ever been created.
Yeah, exactly. You can inscribe it on every single Satoshi. You can inscribe it on a set of sats. And it really gives you the freedom. And people are doing really, really cool things where they're inscribing a parent inscription on one Satoshi, then they're inscribing a bunch of child inscriptions which reference each other. So it's kind of creating a whole programmable art world and programmable information world that is stored in permanence, which there's a key difference, by the way, between ordinals, the art and information that's stored on ordinals, versus like NFTs outside of the ecosystem. So on Ethereum, as an example, which is one of the largest NFT marketplaces and ecosystems, of course, Solana is one of the other ones as well. And there's many others popping up. But ERC 721 and ERC 1155, which are the protocols that define the standard of what is an NFT on the EVM ecosystem, they do not require that the storage of the metadata, in other words, whatever information you're storing, whether a document or art, a JPEG, an MP4 file or music, they do not require that has to be stored on chain. So in order to be ERC 721 and 1155 compliant, it doesn't have to be stored on chain. The code itself and the contract should, but the reference data can be stored anywhere else. So most reputable projects use something called IPFS, which is a decentralized data store. It stands for Interplanetary File System. And it's a good solution, but it's not on chain. It's a separate solution, right? And many other projects that are not as reputable, or maybe for other reasons, they choose to store it on AWS S3 buckets, or even Google Drive in some cases. So what people don't realize is that in some cases, you may be paying a lot of money for an NFT, and if the administrator of that NFT collection forgets to pay the credit card bill for the Google Drive or AWS storage, poof, your metadata is gone. And this is very different from how Ordinals works. This is a huge difference. And this was attempted to be solved on the Ethereum side with inscriptions, but it really just took hold and took off with Ordinal theory and with the Ordinals protocol introducing it on Bitcoin.
Okay. So what you're saying is that all the ordinal data for Bitcoin is on chain.
Exactly. It's inscribed on chain, which is what makes it very valuable, very scarce, and very expensive. As an example, a 4 mega inscription or a 4 megabyte or larger inscription is a big deal on Bitcoin right now. To inscribe something on the layer 1 Bitcoin for 4 megabytes is about $64,000 in transaction fee that it costs to inscribe that. Whereas doing an IPFS, a couple of cents, maybe $1 at some point. So data, which is forcing developers, engineers, and even artists. I'm working with some artists who are learning really cool engineering techniques to compress their art and compress their data without losing quality, right? Because as an artist, you don't want to compromise on the quality of your work. So there's some really interesting innovation that's coming out of that. And then, of course, the L2 scalability, the other elements that are being developed to enhance the protocol are going to further give way to allow you to have like on-chain music albums, on-chain streaming perhaps at one point, and much more that perhaps we can't even imagine right now.
I'm just wondering where the roles of Lightning Network and Taproot will be able to come into the ordinals.
That's a great question. In my view, like you look at Lightning and what it's done wonders for the payment settlement with the state channel, right? Like when I went over to Hong Kong earlier in May for Bitcoin Asia, it was the coolest thing where I could give them some Hong Kong dollars and they gave me this like tap to pay card, which was loaded with some sats. And then I could go around the entire conference and pay for things just by tapping, and it was paying in sats instantly with state channels and powered by Lightning Network and BTC Pay Server, which is an open source software, right? So Lightning has done tremendous, service to the community by doing that. I think it'll continue to evolve, but I do believe that Lightning is more, in my view, of a single purpose use case, with those state channels being more payment settlement based. I don't really see Lightning being the way to stream music on chain or to view art on chain. Maybe it will evolve to it, but for me, that's like trying to say, can an airplane drive really fast? Like, sure, it can drive fast, but why would you want it to? Let it just fly, like let it just do a fast takeoff from the runway and then soar to the skies. It's a different use case. So in the case of Lightning, I think that stays there. In the case of Taproot is what's enabling. It's just a way of enabling use cases like Ordinals and Runes to come on. I think the true use case, Taproot Wizards, which is a collective of developers, actually, I'm a big fan of those guys, part of their community as well. They're launching initiatives to develop improvements to the Bitcoin core protocol itself, such as the BIP 420 proposal and OPCAT proposal, which will allow you to have true L2 state verifications on Bitcoin. So in the case of EVM ecosystem, you have Ethereum, which is a layer 1, and Arbitrum, which is a layer 2. Arbitrum essentially is able to process a bunch of transactions really quickly at really low cost, but then it secures them by sending them and, essentially sending a report of those transactions. I'll keep the analogy simple, back to Ethereum. Now you can do that part on Bitcoin, but what you can't do on Bitcoin is Ethereum actually has a contract itself on chain one, which closes the loop and says that this report that Arbitrum is sending me back is valid and is compliant with the structure that I expected it to come back. On Bitcoin, such functional checks don't exist yet. Bitcoin is very single use case, send a payment. So sure, you can sign things on Bitcoin. You can say that, yes, I have settled my L2 transaction of Bitcoin. You can do this today. But Bitcoin doesn't actually have any way to enforce that, wait, Arbitrum is sending me bad data. It doesn't have any way to check this, as an example. So with OPCAT, you're going to be able to allow Bitcoin to say, yes, this data that's coming to me is good. And this data that's coming to me, wait, something's wrong here. It doesn't comply, fail the transaction. So it's going to give Bitcoin functional transactions. This is going to enable so many use cases because you then get past the transactional and the cost and the scalability limits of the L1 while still being able to benefit from the security of the L1. And I'm really bullish on this, and Ferrum is actually contributing to the research and development here, even implementing it into all of our own solutions, and we're excited. It makes us every day excited to go create some really cool stuff for the community and for the public.
Last week I talked to one of the founders of a company who was building a custom Oracle on Bitcoin. So I think you're going to be able to have that data capture really soon.
Absolutely. I love that. I would love to connect with them, actually. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we'll do that offline. So
absolutely.
So what you're telling me, it goes against the narratives. It goes against the narratives that Bitcoin is only a store of value and is not used for Satoshi's vision of peer-to-peer network. But if you create those ordinals and the music and all this budding ecosystem of art and culture and everything on Bitcoin, that does correlate to Satoshi's vision, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a very nuanced conversation that's actually happening with the core contributors right now. This is the for evolution of Bitcoin versus against evolution of Bitcoin discussion. I wouldn't even call them camps, because part of what makes Bitcoin great is that there's no one deciding party. We all decide together. What has made Bitcoin the most prominent, most dominant chain? We talk about BTC dominance charts, and when it sits at 50%, what that's really saying is that Bitcoin's value as this one asset, as this one chain, is greater than 50% of the tangible market cap of all other chains and their assets combined, right? That is massive. Well, how did that happen? That happened because Bitcoin, for many, many years, over a decade and a half almost at this point, has stuck to simplicity, to a simple use case, to reliability, to security. There's no easy way to hack a Bitcoin wallet, even though there has been hacks of DAOs and other ecosystems. But to this day, other than a phishing hack, a technical hack for Bitcoin has not occurred to this day. Yeah, right. That we know of at scale. So, and that is because it has been kept simple. Even the proposal I'm talking about, the OPCAP proposal, actually initially, this protocol was included in the Bitcoin core by Satoshi and was removed in 2010 because of the same fears that it will make the protocol more complex and introduce more vulnerabilities. So why are we talking about this now? I think Bitcoin needed that phase, this decade and a half phase, to establish its resilience, to establish its stability and security. At that time, the number of nodes running were far less. The capital at stake was far less. And the game theory has played out now. Now the amount of capital securing Bitcoin, the amount of nodes securing Bitcoin, even when you look at the amount of nodes running, the chart has gone up and to the right extremely, just at this halving with the Runes protocol coming out. So the security and the state of Bitcoin has evolved. And just like anything else, we need to have a discussion. Where do we go from here? So I think the solution of OPCAT is really exciting because it only introduces about a 5 code lines chain to the protocol itself, to Bitcoin core layer 1 itself. It doesn't say that on Bitcoin layer 1, you need to add all of these interesting functionalities and DeFi apps and all that. What it says is that you can use it to enable L2s to add those functionality and then sell them on Bitcoin. So keep Bitcoin itself, add some changes to support the true verification and security, but keep those changes to a minimal and add the extra changes to more experimental L2s and side chains that may come along, right? which I think is a happy medium of this, minute step evolution. Again, one small step for Bitcoin, one great step for crypto all over, right? And I think it can be really nice, and we can experiment with that and see where we end up.
I like that. One small step for Bitcoin, one giant leap for crypto.
Exactly.
I think I'm going to put that on my wall. You know?
I might get a shirt for that. I love it too.
Yeah. All right. You're gonna have a lot of increased data load with ordinals, right? If they take off, which sounds like they are, and they will. How can the narrative is that the Bitcoin network is slow? It's other chains have come out with that say they're faster than everything, like Hedera, like Solana, are fast, right? How does the Bitcoin network, which is the narrative of slow, handle the increased data workload?
I think it shouldn't be faster. Bitcoin L1 itself should not be faster. It's the slowness adds to the security, the 10-minute block time, the difficulty adjustment period every 2 weeks. All of these mechanisms have proven over the last decade and a half that this is solid. It is as hack proof as you can make it. It has security benefits. It has game theory benefits. So I think it should remain that way. This is where I'm in favor of L2's experimenting to add scalability and speed and efficiency. And I think that's where that role lies. Scalability of Bitcoin will max out at about 100 million users, 100 million transactions even. And the reason that is the case is because you end up going to a space where transactions cost and transaction processing times will render the network useless. So to scale beyond that, to bring 1 billion users to Bitcoin, which is, in my opinion, the pathway to bring 1 billion users to crypto at large, even to users of Ferrum itself, you need to add scalability solutions while adhering to the security benefits that Bitcoin has brought. And that's where L2s are going to play a huge role, which is why, whether it's OPCAT, whether it's BIP 420 proposal, or another proposal, let's say this one doesn't work out. I'm very bullish on this because it was already part of the initial protocol. It has the greatest chance of consensus amongst all the developers in the community that's discussing. And already there are teams like Ferrum itself and other teams developing to make it a reality. So it has the greatest chance of being adopted. But if this doesn't, I know there's enough capital, resources, and effort being put to bring something else that will bring L2 state verification, which will bring that scalability and speed for Bitcoin. I can see an art-specific chain, a music streaming chain, a payment settlement chain, all of them being developed as L2s of Bitcoin, and even other chains. Ferrum's goal, what we're enabling, is we've already integrated with over a dozen chains. We're making all of those chains essentially an L2 of Bitcoin by settling them on Ferrum and securing them through Bitcoin with the same rollup process, right? So this is where I see the future going.
Got it. So you have L2s, you have side chains, you have state chat. This concept of I don't know what that is. State channels. So I just want to find out what that is.
Yeah, in a sense, the easiest way I explain state channels is like a limited period side chain. It's not an exactly accurate analogy, but you don't need to set up a whole infrastructure. Let's say me and you, what's happening with Bitcoin and Lightning? Bitcoin and Lightning are communicating, saying, "Hey, I want to create something, and in return, I will send you something." That's all it is, and it's going to be for that limited time. So once those requirements are met, that state channel closes. There's a limited period connection instead of a constant roll-up. So this allows Lightning to do payments with peers again and again, because every time a new payment peer state channel, two-way state channel opens up, there's a payment that happens, it sells on Bitcoin onwards to the next state channel. So it's a side chain that pops up and goes away, is the way I explain this analogy.
That makes sense because it doesn't clog the network. And that makes sense to me that you have it limited, like only for purpose. Yeah, makes sense.
Exactly.
So another knock on Bitcoin has been it's only a store of value. It's only for money, right? But one of the three promises of blockchain technology are banking the unbanked, and a voice for the voiceless, and identity for the unidentified, right? So you believe ordinals can be used to create on-chain identities, right? Fostering a more trustless and transparent ecosystem. How does it do that?
This question, it like literally gives me goosebumps because we talked about this recently at a conference in Lisbon, Portugal, known as the Non-Fungible Conference, where we actually launched the Ordinals passport. And I say we launched it, but it doesn't belong to us. We launched it in the same way Bitcoin is launched. We made it everyone's passport. We open sourced it. We made it an not for profit. And the passport, I'll send you the pictures of this. On the first page, it has the regular passport picture, and it has an artist that contributed the artwork. We're stealing the photo of the person and running away with it. So it's flipping the concept of identity theft to identity saved. And the passport changes the name to everyone's name is Satoshi Nakamoto. And the theme is we are all Satoshis. And why did we do this? We try to tell the story that with Ordinals, with Bitcoin itself, it gives you the ability to choose your currency. That's number one. Lynn Alden talks about this, that our currencies are assigned to us based on the country we are born. We don't get to choose them. So the monetary policy that we are assigned, the financial access that we have, and a lot of those currencies go into a decline, especially if they're not in the top 10 market cap of fiat currencies. They decline even faster. Take the case of Venezuela or Argentina, where you go in and you give $10 and they give you like bags full of cash. And the next day it's worth half or 25% less in the extreme volatile times. So what Bitcoin allows you to do, no matter where you are in the world, right? And through Bitcoin crypto at large, but Bitcoin specifically being the one that kicked it off, it gives you the ability to choose your currency. And it gives you the ability to choose a currency with a monetary policy that cannot change. It has a fixed supply. No matter what you do in the core protocol, that supply is going to remain 21 million. It is going to continue with its halving cycles roughly every 4 years. This thing will not change. So it gives you that choice to pick a currency, where I gave an example earlier that is increasing in value. A house in the US, for example, about 600 Bitcoin many years ago. Now about 6 Bitcoin is the median price of the house. Versus in fiat, $250,000 house, median price of a house. Now it's about $500,000. So the cost is going up if you're earning in fiat, but in Bitcoin it's much less. And through Bitcoin, we speak about crypto at large. We speak about Ferrum, about other projects in general. So that's where I think Bitcoin does serve as a payment mechanism, not just store of value. Now, the reason we think of it very differently is because we think of it in a way that we are only looking at our national currency. The US dollar is very volatile. Like, for example, when I was in Tanzania recently, it lost 25% of the value. The shilling lost 25% of its value against the US dollar. So you could say shilling is very volatile. In the country, it's not, but in the global market, I would convert about $180 and I would get up 400,000 shilling. A week later, I converted $140 and I would get 400,000 shilling. This is very volatile in that sense. So Bitcoin, sure, it's volatile outside, but if you're saying that this AirPod cost me 500,000 sats, it cost me 500,000 sats. In that economy, we're only looking at Satoshis. When you can compare it to something else, sure, you could have more volatility, but within the transaction itself, there's not as much volatility. So I think this conception will change. We will stop looking at eventually Bitcoin in the way of Bitcoin versus dollar. I think people, once they have more access to Bitcoin and sats in general and other crypto assets in general, stable coins, Ferrum, other assets that you may think of, they'll think in those tokens and think how much this costs. So you might have is 500 sats, maybe a couple 100,000 Ferrum, couple 100,000 USDC or whatever of a certain item. That's how we would think of cost. In terms of giving identity, and why Ordinals are giving an identity is because you don't relate. If I give you a serial number of a sat, like serial number 500,236,436, you're like, what is that? But if I say that this stat is where your ordinal passport is inscribed on, which is your unique passport number that is something readable. You might have passport number 233. You might have your Satoshi ID. You might have your ordinal PFP or favorite PFP on there. And it might be the way to get you access to different conferences, to different VIP events, to perks online. Now you have something, the storytelling aspect that I talked about. You have a way to identify that this is my passport. It belongs to me. It's not just a long number that I can't relate to. And it gives you an identity, regardless of whether you're the Maasai tribe or the Hadzabe tribe in Tanzania, where we actually met with some Hadzabe tribe folks who speak in the click language. You know, their names are like this, and they don't have written names. They can have an identity through Ordinals because we can assign them a passport number as an example, or any other mechanism. If somebody else invents a DID through Bitcoin, through Ordinals, they can assign them a way to get an identity to receive payments without having to know who they are. You can verify that they're good people, and then you can assign the entity and move on from there. So I think these problems can be solved. They just haven't been solved and adopted at scale yet. So people have their doubts naturally, but it's going to happen because you look at the pattern of the past. People had the same doubts about the internet. If you look at interviews from 1990s, people were like, what is this internet thing? I can just write a letter. Why do I need to send an email? It gets there anyway. The post office is there. Is the post office going to go away when we have email? All these questions came out, but look at us, many years later, about 3 decades later, and we have a space for each thing, and we're continuing to evolve.
Wow. I just thought of this. I mean, so what you're saying is that you mentioned the click people. You have people from the furthest reaches of the earth who, don't have access to anything really, and what you're saying is that Bitcoin could be used as a last mile solution for people all over the world.
100%. How do you give somebody who doesn't have an ID card, who doesn't have a birth certificate? They don't even count their age in years. They count their age in events. Like I was born in the year of the big earthquake. I was born when there was, they wouldn't even say year actually. I was born when the big earthquake happened. I was born when there was a great migration that came through our area unusually. It should have gone through the other area. I was born when there was a great drought. This is how they measure it, right? And their names, they have no proof of their existence other than they are. So how to get someone like that to participate in the global economy? Well, Stripe will not give them an account because you can't perform proper KYC. They don't have the infrastructure to do that. Braintree, PayPal, they all cannot do that, but Bitcoin can. Now, how do you do that while ensuring that you're still compliant with KYC and AML? This is where we want to work with regulators. This is where I have an interest. Instead of, I'm very much about rebelling against the status quo, but I also understand and appreciate the fact that governments have a role to play. They have a role to provide safety for their citizens, to ensure that bad actors are held accountable. So I could go and work with the government and regulating entities, and I hope others will join me in this mission to say, yeah, this Hadzabe tribe in the remote regions of Tanzania, they're not bad actors. They're not looking to cause anyone harm. They just want to sell their goods and services. So we can vouch for their identity, and we can give them a mechanism to receive payments in shilling, which are being transferred through Bitcoin. For example, somebody starts a payment through their credit card, Stripe-powered application in the US. The USD gets converted into a crypto asset, whether that be Ferrum, Bitcoin, stablecoin, gets converted over into shilling through a settlement provider. Algorand is a great use case in this case to convert assets into currency, and then pays them locally in their cash currency, which they can use to live their life and do commerce locally. That problem can be solved through Bitcoin and through Ordinals. And in fact, already is. We are starting to make some efforts. It's early stages. And this is my call in a way on this podcast, on the Crypto Hipster podcast, for any others that want to join me in this mission, because we want to work together with other builders that want to provide these last mile solutions and build something, hopefully, that will be able to contribute to the betterment of humanity, even a little bit. I think that will be a big impact.
I love it. It's great. Awesome. Yeah, I'm blown away. So, you did say a magic word there. You said regulators. I'm in the U.S. and regulators try to what's the word? Do regulatory capture over the past couple of years of Bitcoin, and we had these ETFs and everything come out, and now Wall Street is leaning toward embracing it, but we're not fully there yet, right? We will be, I believe, someday. But how will regulators approach ordinals and their impact on the financial system? Because anything that's impacted the financial system has faced tremendous resistance. So how do you think ordinals will fare with the regulators?
Yeah, so I was born in Pakistan, live in Utah, in the U.S. now, and being a U.S. citizen, even if you're doing business outside of the U.S., you are subject to the same regulation and compliance rules that you have to follow being a U.S. citizen. So I was actually meeting with our lawyer in Singapore, and unfortunately, and this is something that should be discussed, and I'm glad that this is being changed now with some of the policy and the narrative in the U.S. I'm happy that it is being changed, but the SEC was not making good rules or any rules to tell us how to comply. Like for crypto companies, there was no clarity in how we can be compliant. We want to be compliant. We want to follow the laws. We want to follow the rules, but there is no clarity on how to proceed with that. This is why Coinbase was filing the cases that they were filing, which their stand with crypto initiatives. I think regulators have a natural friction because they're backed by lobbyists, and the biggest lobbyists are the same banks who feel a threat to their existence with decentralized crypto. But what I've now found in some of my meetings in Lisbon, my conception was that this direct payment settlement was going to be a problem for companies like Visa and MasterCard even. But what I learned is that their sections in Visa and MasterCard were actually looking forward to adopting crypto because one of their biggest expenses is fraud handling, chargeback handling. The reason credit card fees are 2%, 3% in foreign countries like Tanzania, 5% is because they have a huge cost in fraud claims and chargebacks, which is why they have to charge these administrative fees. With crypto, you can solve that. So in terms of regulation, I think Ordinals will probably not see the day of light in terms of regulation conversation for probably another few years because they're still in their infancy. But as they start to become mainstream and as you start to see billions in liquidity flowing into Ordinals and using Ordinals as a means for more than just art, but also as a means for identity, as a means for transactional payments, as a means for securing L2 state verifications, as an example, I think they will come into the conversation. And I'm very bullish with the narrative in the US now. I think they will make a favorable conversation rather. I don't think all policy will be favorable, but I think they will be open to conversing with crypto experts, with folks who have built in this space. And I hope a lot of my colleagues, a lot of the folks who obviously have a larger stake in crypto, have been around longer than us, will engage in that conversation and make some policy that will be better for everyone. But I think regulation is going to come out, and I think it's good for regulation to come out, as long as it's reasonable regulation, as long as it's not fear-mongering regulation. It's one that encourages innovation and that puts in the controls that are needed to protect the citizens from harm.
I just had a wild thought, and you may have a take on it. I'll ask you. I'll tell you the thought that came in my head because you mentioned the fraud prevention departments at Visa and MasterCard. Elizabeth Warren, a politician here, has had her anti-crypto army regime against crypto, and I always thought it was she doesn't like crypto or she doesn't like the crypto community. She doesn't like Visa or MasterCard. What if she doesn't like Visa or MasterCard and she's against crypto because she's against them? What's the potential with that?
I haven't met Elizabeth Warren, and I like to be a little cautious of having extreme stances against people. But her policies speak for her viewpoint very clearly, and she's constantly spoken about making crypto regulation. But when she's making crypto regulation, she's going on stage with Jamie Dimon and the heads of the banks that crypto is against. So it's kind of like saying, I'm going to regulate the auto industry, and just came out of a meeting with the train industry to make regulations against the auto industry. It is in the favor of the train industry to make regulation against the auto industry because it will provide more customers to the train industry. So it makes no sense. If you want to regulate the auto industry, you need to bring in the experts who are spending their blood, sweat, and tears, making the automobile industry more efficient, providing transport means to the community, to the public, and obviously making a business use case, and work with them to make those regulations. So what I would like to see Elizabeth Warren do is, instead of working with just the Wall Street banks and just Washington DC, is to engage in a conversation with Coinbase, engage in the conversation with MetaMask, with Consensus, engage in a conversation with all of the builders in crypto who are some of her citizens. My sister lives in Massachusetts. My mother lives in Massachusetts. I visit there, but I'm not a fan of Elizabeth Warren. But I will turn into a fan of hers if she says, hey, crypto people, engage with me in a conversation about how we can make the community and their funds safer, how we can provide value to the community through crypto regulation. We are not against regulation. We are against bad regulation, especially one that is made with an agenda by people whose interests are not aligned with the success of crypto. The success of crypto threatens the current status quo. And unless Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan, all these bankers who I do have some respect for because they have created a financial system that allows me to flourish around the world. But unless they have a vested interest in the success of crypto, they're not going to make the best regulation for crypto. So I think there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a circuit with financial settlement experts, with crypto experts, with government experts coming together, and as a collective making some regulation, which I think would be a better regulation that comes out for the people rather than a single-sided agenda that is being pushed.
That sounds like a good answer for every politician. every regulator. That seems like a good way for everybody to do this. So
Indeed.
yeah, so thank you very much. So I want to thank you very much for your time today. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and this has been a wonderful conversation. And I have one last question for you, and it's really simple. How can people find out more information about you, about Ferrum Network? How can they start to get hold Ordinals? How can they do that?
The best way to find out more information about me is to follow me on X. My profile is Taha Abbasi, TahaAbbasi. And if you want to learn about Ferrum, the protocol that I contribute to, you can just go to ferrum.network on our website, and you'll learn about all our socials, our Telegram, our Twitter, and you get to learn all about it there. The best and the easiest way to get yourself an ordinal to start off is get yourself an XVerse wallet. That's XVERSE. Get yourself an XVerse wallet, and then head over to Magistat or Magic Eden and find the least expensive ordinal and just find a way to transact and purchase that. Because just doing that act is going to give you so much learning about how transactions occur on Bitcoin if you've never done one, what it takes to purchase an ordinal, and what it takes then to hold and secure that ordinal for yourself. And if you have any questions, reach out to me in my Twitter DMs, and I will be happy to help you throughout that journey.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jamil.